On March 23, 2020, with the destructive COVID detailed in 167 nations and domains, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres required a worldwide truce to help a general well-being reaction. It was the first worldwide truce request since the office was established in 1945, in the consequence of World War II. The anger of the infection outlines the imprudence of war, Guterres said. End the disorder of war and battle the infection that is attacking our reality. On the ground, minimal changed. In excess of 12 furnished gatherings, from the National Liberation Army in Colombia to the Communist Party of the Philippines, at first embraced Guterres' allure, yet most proposals to set down arms where it is possible that uneven or didn't finish in a formal truce understanding. On February 26, 2021, the Security Council attempted another tack. It passed Resolution 2565, which less aggressively yet more sober-mindedly required a supported compassionate respite to vaccinate the world. For this situation, there were late chronicled points of reference. In the 1960s, delegates from the World Health Organization dispatched its heightened program to annihilate smallpox, zeroing in on nations like Ethiopia and present-day Bangladesh, where the infection was endemic and where General Well-Being Authority. This victory of general well-being strategy should happen indeed, compassionate experts say, to finish the COVID-19 pandemic. From Afghanistan to Myanmar, Nigeria to Azerbaijan. Individuals got in the midst of viciousness and unsteadiness should be vaccinated. General well-being specialists dread that if struggle zones don't get immunizations soon, these spots could become problem areas for transmission and hatcheries for conceivably hazardous variations of SARS-CoV-2, the infection that causes COVID-19. Yet, pounding out transitory truces will not be simple. The political circumstance is more complicated now than before, to a limited extent due to the bounty of non-state entertainers like Al-Qaeda and one self-announced Islamic State that control huge areas of land, and are not really anxious to give governments kudos for inoculation crusades. Moreover, general well-being authorities say, immunization aversion and other squeezing needs take steps to disrupt inoculation endeavors. In Afghanistan, where the Taliban has as of late dominated, COVID-19 inoculations have effectively eased back. All things considered, helpful moderators are squeezing ahead. That is the truth of our calling, that we never surrender, said Katya Papagianni, Chief for Intercession Backing and Strategy at the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue, a Swiss-based private tact association. These exchanges are educated by the developing acknowledgement that to effectively handle breaks in battling for compassionate access, arbiters should draw in with educators, regarded seniors, ladies' gatherings, nearby finance managers and other local area pioneers. It isn't excessively complicated. Charles Deutscher, a strategy consultant for the International Committee of the Red Cross (ICRC), composed on the association's Humanitarian Law and Policy blog in March. It's contributing time and showing sympathy, drink more tea, sit with individuals and pay attention to them to comprehend their interests, societies and ideologies prior to coming at them with a needle. Also, with regards to managing fighting groups, those in the field say it's fundamental for stay politically impartial and to persistently support the conditions for harmony. You in a real sense need to haggle each day, said Papagianni. You might haggle each day and each evening, in case that is what's required. Quote, D. Galuba, ranking executive of Field Security for the Compassionate Guide Association Mercy Corps, added that contention gatherings will just permit help laborers access who have demonstrated themselves to be outside of the fight, totally unprejudiced. Philanthropic faculty should be saw as not aiding different warriors, she said. Trust is everything. Wars have halted for mass immunization crusades previously. However, the WHO's smallpox annihilation crusade was not history's first worldwide inoculation drive. That honor has a place with the Spanish government's overall vaccination exertion against smallpox, which started in 1803 and sent Edward Jenner's initial antibody. The WHO's program was the solitary to kill a human irresistible infection. Smallpox was the best objective, in enormous measure, for reasons that recognize it from COVID-19. The smallpox infection must be spread by individuals, which means there were no secret creature supplies, in contrast to the different types of bats and different warm-blooded animals that harbor strains of COVID that have leaped to people. Smallpox's manifestations were particular and simple to distinguish, and the infection was not spread by asymptomatic transporters. There was a stable and exceptionally viable immunization. Indeed, even with these benefits, cancelling smallpox from the planet was a considerable endeavor. It required the collaboration of all nations all through the world and the dynamic support of more than 50. Composed the mission's chief, the unbelievable Donald A. Henderson, in 2011. The last push of smallpox annihilation, one of the milestone accomplishments in general well-being, occurred from 1976 to 1977 and needed to work around battles in Ethiopia and Somalia. In 1995, previous President Jimmy Carter arranged the Guinea worm ceasefire during a savage common conflict in Sudan. The almost half-year stop in battling was, around then, the longest helpful truce ever. It empowered well-being laborers to really focus on those experiencing guinea worm illness, a grim parasitic disease, and circulate help and preventive well-being measures. Maybe the most fitting contemporary point of reference was the 1980s dispatch of a progression of stops in battling to work with youth inoculation crusades. The principal endeavor was in 1985 in El Salvador, a country then in the pains of a continuous common conflict. UNICEF chief James Grant was enlivened by the idea of youngsters as a zone of harmony, which called for kids to be insured in struggle zones, an ideal he thought even bad guys with firearms could concede to. Moving between the public authority of then-President José Napoleon Duarte and the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front renegades, and depending on help from the Catholic Church, Grant arranged 3 days of quietness, fleeting islands of quiet that permitted well-being laborers to vaccinate. Those initial 3 days saw somewhere around 250,000 kids get immunizations. The delay in battling happened each year through 1991, drastically decreasing the frequency of measles and lockjaw and killing polio in the country. The Times of Serenity model was taken up by the Pan American Health Organization for its Health as a Bridge for Peace program, which drew on viable correspondences and expansive associations with neighborhood networks around arranging an antibody rollout to guarantee a positive outcome. The sister. During suspensions of threats during the 1980s and 1990s, standard vaccinations arrived at youngsters in nations including Afghanistan, Cambodia, Lebanon and Sudan. The present struggles are more confounded, making it intense to convey COVID-19 antibodies. In 2021, the thought of COVID-19 Days of Serenity appears to be unfathomable. That is on the grounds that most outfitted contentions of late are pursued not between nations but rather inside the limits of country-states, as indicated by a 2018 report from the Peace Research Institute Oslo. The ICRC gauges that in excess of 50 million individuals live in regions completely constrained by furnished non-state specialists, and about 100 million live in regions where control by these gatherings is more liquid. This variety of contention is extended and open-finished. An ICRC evaluation in 2016 tracked down that the normal period of time the office spent in the nations facilitating its 10 biggest activities was over 36 years. As of August, the association included 605 furnished gatherings in 44 countries that represented a worry to its compassionate work. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Life is Often if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.